right, and we are here joined by Mr. Bill Newell. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. We're only, man, it's like we got this week, then Final Four is next week, and then it's Turkey Day.
Absolutely. And then after that, who knows what's after that, right? But
right.
championship. Guess it'd be like a championship week, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get to our games this week, which games kind of surprised you last week, or didn't surprise you last week, I should say?
Well, I guess there was a lot that didn't surprise us last week. I do think, though, that Marblehead was a winner over Middleborough, which is a number 3 seeded team in Division IV. Marblehead 14th seeded, just barely got into the tournament, but was playing nice football, good football right at the end of the season. They pulled off the win. They're on the road this week at Grafton, the number 6 seeded team. So in theory, a lower seeded team than the team they beat a week ago. But you never can tell with these matchups. They're not perfect, they're not bad. I'm not knocking them, but they're not perfect. And we've noticed that. We've seen some of that in some of these divisions, but it's just going to be hard to so whether they can pull that off again, whether the cards line up for them or not, who knows? But that'll be a tough one for Marblehead on Friday night out there.
Especially in Division One. In Division One, there was no surprises in Division One. Everything that happened in Division One, it's no surprises. The top seeded teams are all advanced in Division One. We had that one upset in, I think, Division 6. We had the upset in Division 6. Stoneham defeated Abington. I was actually at that game. It was a pretty good game. Stoneham.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I noticed that today that Stoneham was in there, and I'm thinking, wait, where are they? But they were pretty high. I mean, a pretty low seed is what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
they were 15.
Yeah,
not your typical 15 seed as well.
Yeah. So, but I mean, they have a very good. They've had a good program over the years. So we'll see about that. But I mean, another game is this Kip game playing at Carver, a team that's undefeated this year, right?
Yeah. Coach Rabbit is well aware of. When I spoke to him before their game, before their game against Sutton, he told me he was well aware how good Carver is. He said they're going to pose a big challenge for his team this week. But I think the way Kip's offense has been playing, I think they could. Kip seems like the team that could play in any type of shootout.
Yeah. No, I it's kind of what I was thinking. And then I did look up Carver. We were just talking about that a minute ago. And they're undefeated. They beat Cohasset. Cohasset is the team that beat Manchester Essex. And so it's a tough call here. But you're right. I think Kip's got to play one of their best football games of the year if they're going to come out with a W here. But it's doable. This is a number 2 seeded team and a team that it looks like they played a decent schedule to get where they are. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks to be a matchup of 2 good offenses too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A good bunch of points as well.
Yeah, Carver's putting a lot of points up on the board week after week. But and then again, maybe the schedule's not as tough as it could be. But clearly they're a good team. They're an 8, and they've got the what was it, the number 3 seed? Number 2 seed, excuse me. So
the key for me, the key for Kip is always going to be Mornell Castro. I think he's the biggest difference maker on that team. Granted, they got other difference makers as well, but he is the difference maker on that team. That offense goes when he has great games, that whole offense seems to be rolling whenever he's being productive, and that's been the case this whole season. That's one player I've really been high on all year of his production, and I think he's going to be the one to lead them to victory if they're going to get back to the Final Four.
Yeah, and as we've talked about before with them, they're more of a team this year in the sense that they're they don't have they have good players like Mornell Castro you mentioned, but they have other good players, great players, but on the other hand, they're pretty solid across the board from 1 to 11 on that team. So so that'll be a good one to watch. The other one is Salem. This Salem team, man, they've lost like 2 games, and they've lost those 2 games by what? A total of 3 points, I believe it is. Something, right?
Yeah, total. 3 points total. To correct.
Yeah. So, and I was also thinking about this the other day, and their last regular season game was a loss to Peabody. And, if they had lost to Peabody, which is also still alive in the D2 tournament, if they had lost to Peabody by 10 points, no one would have been surprised. At least, us kind of guys would not be surprised to see that score, because Peabody's in Division 2, Salem's in Division 6. You're both undefeated more or less going into the game, and Salem had the one loss at that point. But anyways, but they lost by a point, whatever it was, and nearly had a chance to win the game. So it's just crazy. But they've had a fantastic year. They had that shootout win. You're speaking about wins last week. That was a nice win for Salem, because they're being challenged. That Dennis Yarmouth was a high-powered offense, and they held them to 23, maybe something like that.
26.
26. Yeah.
But I think the last points came late in the game. The game was already decided.
That's right. That's a good point. Right, and they a couple of scores late. At least one score very late. So yeah, it could have been even a better defensive effort, but they did give up some points late in that contest in the last few minutes. So yeah. But very impressive. I mean, you're checking off the boxes. Salem is every single week, and they've had big games all the way down the stretch here in the second half of the season and into the playoffs here. Yeah. So I mean, this would be nothing new for them, and it seemed to me they're up for the task, and they're lucky because they're at home. They've got another home game here coming up against Cardinal Spellman. I think a very tough opponent for them, but at home.
One thing I'll say about Salem is, if you want to talk about proving people wrong, because there was plenty of doubters on thinking that they weren't that good. The early on, before they got to that classical game, they were just beating on cupcake teams, and then they shown they could compete with the best of them. Even when I made a mention of how after that classical game, the players told me that game showed them that they could play with anybody, and I hope it showed everybody else. A lot of people kind of laughed at that comment. A lot of people had a little chuckle on that comment, like for some reason. But yeah, I can't say enough about Salem, what they're doing offensively, defensively. All those guys are really productive. And now, I know I was praying that we got a Salem St. Mary's matchup, but Cardinal Spellman, it's just hard to beat a team twice in their house. It was hard. St. Mary's went there, they fell behind early. Then within like a 2-minute stretch, they came, not even a 2-minute stretch, like a minute stretch, they took a 22-21 lead, and then it was, I don't know what happened in that fourth quarter, but I guess Maxwell Parent got hurt in that game or something. But yeah, that fourth quarter, it was all Cardinal Spellman. Spartans really couldn't stop their offense, couldn't stop them in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and just back to Salem for a moment. I did talk to Coach Matt Bouchard this week from Salem, and he wanted to single out Albert Pujols, and he's a young man that caught that pass at the end against Glasgow, but he's also really picked it up defensively. So you've seen them, and they can make plays on offense, and they can also make plays on defense. And Albert Pujols is one of those guys out of safety position. In when you come against some of these teams late in the year, they have some guys who can go up and get the football. Yeah. And so Pujols has been stepping up defensively, and that's a huge key for this team, I think, moving forward. One of the huge keys if they can continue on.
Yeah, and just the story of the Salem program itself, being a doormat a couple of years ago, not having players coming out, to now, you're a game away from a chance from the semifinals, and a little closer to the state championship game. What a story that would be if they're able to run the table and pull that off.
I know, unbelievable story. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. We got Marblehead and Danvers in the North Shore, some other North Shore teams that also advanced. Marblehead with the upset. I forgot who they upset.
Yes, Middleborough, right? Middleborough.
Yeah.
And now they're out at Grafton on Friday. Danvers, Danvers is a team that Blackstone Valley, they hung on to beat them 20-19. and they were up 20-0, I guess, in that game. And Blackstone Valley had a chance with a field goal right at the end. So they're kind of thinking to themselves, well, wait a minute, how well did we really play last week? So they know they got to step it up this week. And I talked to Coach Ryan Nolan from Danvers this week, and they got a lot to work on this week, he feels. But that's a good thing. You survive, you move on, you play another game, and you have a chance to pull it out. What I heard is they were passing the ball 2 weeks ago. Prior to that in Marblehead, they didn't pass the ball that much, but they can run and pass. And if they can get that nice balance and somehow make it all work at Dedham on Friday night, then maybe they can move on themselves. It's just they're a 5 seed and they're playing out a 4 seed in Dedham. And again, what that means, who knows? But
I think sometimes at this point, those seeds, it kind of evens out. So you don't know what type of game you get, but most likely you probably will end up with a close game just because of the talent level kind of evens out when you get to that point with teams that are that close in rankings. And Danvers, that's another program. Man, they've really been making some noise the last several years.
Yeah, they've played tough, and they played a tough schedule for a number of years now. You mentioned another thing too. We were talking about Division I. So the Prep is hosting BC High Friday night, a team they beat a couple of weeks ago down there to wrap up the regular season. But while there have been some close scores, I think in some of these divisions, in Division I, the scores in the opening round not close at all. You know what I mean? There's no game that I would consider a close game.
No, none of them.
Nothing.
I don't think each team that lost, I don't score didn't get to 10 points.
24-7 was the closest score I see right there in D1.
Yeah. That's the closest one. Everyone, the highest points from the losing team was 8 points, and that was Taunton against BC High. So,
Andover won 19-0. Weymouth won 20-0. I still wouldn't call those close. 2019, that's close.
I was at the Andover Franklin game. And honestly, it could have been a lot more. Just Andover, they had a lot of missed opportunities. They had some chances in the red zone. They didn't capitalize. They didn't capitalize offensively. They didn't play their best. Defensively, they played their best, but offensively, they didn't play their best. So that score could have got a lot worse if offense was clicking. With that Prep game, St. John's Prep and BC High. I don't know what it's going to take for BC High to beat the Prep because they haven't beat them in a long time, and the games have not been close. Last year, when they played in the regular season, the game was close for a little bit, and then the Prep pulled away. This year, when the Prep went over there, it was that ground game once again. If you can't stop their ground game, you're not going to beat the Prep.
And I'm not taking anything. I mean, the Prep, you have to play who you play. But if they really weren't challenged that much by Leominster, they had the game in hand early on, but they jumped out to a fast start, and that's what you'd expect with a 1 seed against a 16 seed. But like we mentioned, some of these other teams are being challenged week to week to week. So, I think the Prep knows what they're doing, and they'll be ready for BC High on Friday night. And I would be surprised if it's anything other than kind of a similar score to what you saw down there a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, one thing about Coach St. Pierre's guys, they never take their opponents lightly. No matter how much better they are than their opponent, they don't take them lightly. They approach each game very seriously and try to handle the business just so not give the opponents any type of confidence.
And the coach always says it's all about how they play. And something and I believe him. I mean, that's what and why not frame it in that context for your players? Because that is something that it's all about them. It's all about their preparation during the week. It's all about them, how they come out and play on a Friday night. And it's not so much about their opponent. Obviously when you get into these closer matchups later on, it'll be about the opponent as well, but they just got to do what they got to do, and they should be able to compete.
Yeah, definitely. And the matchup, the biggest matchup or the game of the week in any division, I believe it's that Zavarian Brothers versus Springfield Central game. That one they played earlier this season. Springfield Central, I think, has beaten them the last 3 times. Though they've eliminated them the last 2 times in the postseason. A little rivalry there, but these are teams with 2 really good players all around. Springfield Central was bringing in a freshman quarterback who's highly heralded. Zavarian got their senior quarterback who's already signed to Michigan State. So, hey, it's you never know. But I think that's going to be the game of the week for sure.
You think so? Yeah, yeah. As well as, and it's at Zavarian. So
yeah,
they're the number 2 seed. They've got the home field. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think Springfield, the last game they played was at Zavarian. Springfield Central went over there and beat them. But they had a back and forth affair before Springfield Central pulled away in that game. So that's
okay.
That's where I'll be Friday.
Nice. All right.
Who do you have on this week on the podcast?
For coaches, yeah, we had Coach Brian St. Pierre, Ryan Nolan of Danvers, Matt Bouchard of Salem will be on this week. I know I'm missing somebody here. We'll have Jim Rabbit from KIP on, and who am I missing here? I'm missing somebody here. This is not good, but I think we'll have other coaches on. Rick will have some other coaches as well. I know we got Colin McQueen from Amesbury. And also Pat LaMusta from Linfield High School. And, I know I'm forgetting somebody here, but I can go back on my notebook here.
I'm going to listen to the podcast.
No, that's all right. Yeah, that's fine. They'll find it.
They'll listen to the podcast. Will you be at any of the games this week?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, I think the Salem game is the big game to go to in this area right here for sure. It's a home game Friday. And, it's every time Salem takes the field now, it's special, it's unique, and it's they're making some history in a way, for the program in these playoffs. So it's a big game for Salem and a big game for the area, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you once again. We only got a couple more of these before it's all done.
Yeah. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There we go.
Yeah. Always. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you got it.